Welcome to Branding 2, the 10 rules of successful branding. Break 1 and you're done. And just as a reminder, branding is the art of setting yourself apart from everyone else. And these 10 immutable, which means never changing rules, are critical to developing a successful brand. So let's dig in. Rule number 1, remember that a brand is a perception. It's what people think of you. So if you go to a conference or a meeting and you meet somebody the first time and they ask you where you're from and you tell them, what is their response? Whatever their response is how they perceive you. That is your brand in their mind. So for instance, if I went to a conference and said, oh yeah, I live in Arizona, are they going to say, oh my gosh, it's so unbearably hot there? Well, in their minds, that's your brand. Or if you say, oh, I'm from North Dakota, they might say, oh my gosh, that must be unbearably cold. That's the brand in their minds. You might say, oh, I'm from Oakland, California. And people might say, geez, I'm so sorry about all the homeless camps and the garbage. Isn't it unsafe there? If so, that's the brand, their brand in their eyes. Heck, if somebody says, oh, I'm from Hawaii, people will go, whoa, I wish I could live there, because this photo that you see is how they picture Hawaii in their eyes. It's brand. If you have somebody, you tell them where you're from and they say, oh, I'm so sorry, which I have seen in some communities, guess what? You may be in need of some rebranding or repositioning to change it. And by the way, what they think in their minds might not even be true. If I told somebody I was from Arizona and they said it's unbearably hot, I could easily say that, you know what, 2 hours away from Phoenix, you could be in the mountains at 7,000 feet in Flagstaff. You know, I mean, it's not necessarily true, but that's the perception that's stuck in their minds. Heck, if we go to Oakland, they have Jack London Square right in the middle of their downtown. It's fantastic. You know, and so sometimes you have to change the story so that Jack London Square is priority number 1, and they're known more for that than maybe some homeless camps. So brands aren't necessarily true, but they are perceptions of what people and how people perceive you. Just remember that. And number 2, brands are built on product, not marketing. As I've said numerous times, marketing will bring people to you just once. The only thing that brings them back is your product, the experience. You know, and that is so critical. And when we talk about the experience, it must be either different or it better be the best of better. If it's better than what I could get closer home, then I'm likely to skip what I have closer home to come to you. Or you might have the most of something. And by the way, notice that asterisk after better, that's only by third-party endorsement. You will obviously think you're the best at something, but you know what? We need third parties to say it so it won't fall on deaf ears. But when you want to be the most of something or the best Napa Valley is a perfect example of having both of those with 375 plus wineries. Even though there are gazillion wine countries everywhere, they were the first, they're the biggest, and arguably the best. You know, speaking of the best, Whistler Resort. I mean, I was part of this effort. It's been the number 1 top-rated ski resort destination in North America. That's their brand, and they still own it. And so that's a best of. So, well, if I live in Seattle, I'll skip over other skiers because Whistler's so much better. You know, in the case, or different, Pitchfork Steak Fondue in Medora, North Dakota. By the way, it's a town of 135 people. Yet it's on my bucket list because I can't get that somewhere else. That would be a really cool experience. Totally different. So there you go. Number 3, logos and slogans are not brands. That is so important. When you look at all these car logos, every one of these has a perception in your mind. BMW might be expensive, very sporty. Mercedes might be known as very luxurious. Subaru and Jeep might be, this is the place, the car we need to drive during the winter months. I mean, we could add Chevrolet to that. We could add Ford to that. You know, all of these has a perception. Porsche, you say, oh, I wish I could have one of those. And you know what? Would you buy any of these cars only based on the logo? Would you say, I want a Toyota because I like that logo better than the other logos? No, of course not. Every one of them, you have a perception about these in your mind. The same thing happens for cities and towns. If you saw just these logos, is there one of these that says, oh, I want to go there? Just by the logo. Now, you're probably thinking, Sedona, I already know what it's about. You already have a perception in your mind. But what about Abbotsford in British Columbia or any other town? And by the way, your logo and your slogan are just marketing messages to support and reinforce your brand. As a matter of fact, logos and slogans make up just 2% of your brand. So the rule is, before you get into logos and slogans, decide what you want to be known for specifically. And when you market that, this is Devon, Alberta. Their brand is biking. And by the way, it should always be after that. So sell your primary experience that sets you apart. And that would be Devon's biking, grab life by the handlebars. And then down in the bottom right is where you say, and by the way, you'll find it in Devon. It's always a by the way. Your logo and slogan is by the way. And their slogan down there is Devon, enjoy the ride. See what I mean? Number 4, avoid focus groups at all costs. Just say no. Apple has never used a focus group in their entire company history. And Steve Jobs famously said once that people don't know what they want until you show them. And that's so true. But you might get caught in this. Oak Harbor, Washington, their focus group got together and say in our logo, oh, we should have an oak tree because we're Oak Harbor. Oh, and Mount Baker is in the background. And oh, we're on Whidbey Island, so we should show the water and a boat going through that. And oh, we're a Navy base, so we should have a jet plane flying through the serene setting. And you end up with a cartoon. So I went to Oak Harbor. I said, knock it off. Sell the feeling. And this is the logo they use. They're selling the feeling. Okay? And remember, they're not about sailing. That's not necessarily their brand, but it's 2% of the brand. It sells the feeling. And I always say, if this was easy, everyone would be doing it. It's not. And focus groups end up like this because you're trying to make everybody happy. Number 5, avoid branding by public consent. You always build your brand on feasibility, not just local sentiment. Otherwise, you're going to have a brand like this. And have you ever gone anywhere that had something for everyone? No, we go where there's something for us specifically. And when it comes to branding, a city or local government can facilitate or fund the process, but don't ever have elected officials vote on a brand. It is never a top-down exercise. You have to remember that your elected officials were elected to be all things to all people. Brands can't be. And so, a byproduct of brands for the people is the committee that compromises and kills a potential brand home run. This is why you never see statues of committees in public parks. You see brave leaders. Never do branding by public consent or by permission. Well, what do you think? Do not market your location first. Cities, towns, counties. I mean, when I go pull out, a visitor guide from anywhere, this happens to be Texas, and it's Cedar Hill, Conroe, Baytown, Bedford, Beaumont, Pearland, Longview, Laredo, Fort Worth. If you haven't been to these towns, you don't really care. What you're looking for is, where can I find Texas wineries? Where can I find the best trails? Where can I find the best cowboy attractions? See what I mean? We're not looking for cities and towns. The problem is, this has created a situation where 97% of community-based marketing is ineffective. That's really sad. So always market the experience first. This is Kenora on Lake of the Woods, a huge lake with 14,000 islands. Market the experience and then the location. So having your location at the top of your ads and brochures, never. And number 7, successful brands have a narrow focus. To win, you must jettison the generic. So let me read you a little paragraph about a town. So let's pretend that there's a little town out in the middle of nowhere, 2 hours from you, called Esterville. Now, I'm going to tell you about Estherville. Discover the wide open spaces, gracious people, and picturesque landscapes that characterizes Estherville. Each season holds a promise of a new adventure and an incredible memory. Come join us in Estherville and discover the scenic and recreational opportunities that await you. Having read that, how many of you would drive that 2 hours to Estherville? And if you're saying I wouldn't, because is there anything in that paragraph that you can't get 10 minutes from where you live? And even if I put a photograph of a town in the background, is this enough to close the sale? What is there to do that makes you worth a special trip? So the rule is avoid these words and phrases in your headlines. You can use them in your body text, the main text, as you're talking about experiences. But would explore, discover, experience, outdoor recreation. Look at this list. Could this apply to any city and town anywhere? Yeah. It doesn't set you apart at all using these. And by the way, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing what everybody else is doing. And so you have to avoid these. And that is a big challenge. You must jettison the generic. And number 8, you jettison the generic so much that your name becomes synonymous with your brand. So let's play a little word game here. I want you to tell me what the answer is. You can say it out loud. The country music capital, who owns it? Yep, you're right, Nashville. Gambling adult fun, who owns that? Las Vegas. Kids and family, you might say Orlando, Anaheim, but a lot of people just say Disneyland, Disney World, because it trumps the place. Music theater capital, Branson, Missouri, with 50 plus theaters there. Graceland and Elvis, where would that be? Memphis, it's what puts them on the map. Frozen tundra, that would be Green Bay. They're stuck with this brand from a football game played in the 60s. Okay, so those are brands in the city that go with them. Now let's talk about the city. What is Hershey's brand? Well, you can kind of tell from the photo to the left there, chocolate. Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. What do you say? Yep, the Civil War. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Of course, Amish, Pennsylvania Dutch. Washington, D.C. Corruption. Okay. Government. That's what you know it for. Hollywood. Movies and stars. I mean, we can keep going. Napa Valley. What do you know them for? Wine. Your name needs to be synonymous with your brand, particularly in the local markets you're trying to attract from. And that takes us to rule number 9 is one community, one brand. You don't have the city as their own brand. And I'm not talking about logos and slogans. It's what you want to be known for. The city, tourism, downtown chamber, economic development, all need to be singing out of the same hymnal. And let me show you case history. This is Michigan City, Indiana. For tourism, it's beaches, boating, bedding, brews, and barbecues. They've got all of that. That might be how they promote tourism. And then there is for quality of life, selling quality of life. Write your life's next chapter here in Michigan City. Economic development might be we're fearlessly different, or fearless innovators have arrived and we're looking for more. They're all out of the same hymnal, use the same messaging about being different. And that is really powerful, because the biggest, most powerful effect of branding is when you can go from this, the typical economic development express, that not moving anything and moving anywhere because everybody's doing their own thing, to this. And that's what you need to know. And number 10, you never roll out a brand until you can deliver on the promise. You may need a bridge brand, and let me give you an example of that. This is Barrie, Ontario. They're totally reimagining their downtown, redeveloping it, adding performing arts, doing a farmer's market, adding a plaza. So they did these kinds of ads. The transformation is underway. It's kind of a teaser to the brand and what's coming. So they've done these. That's your bridge. So we know what our brand is going to be, and if it's not there already, we need to create a bridge until we are there. And then once they've done this, which they've done, they switch gears to unforgettable and unabashed. See what I mean? That's a bridge brand. And finally, there's only 3 killers of any branding effort. And number one is local politics. And by the way, it's worse with membership organizations than it is with elected official. Then number two, lack of champions willing to push it forward. And number three, the lack of money, both public and private. And by the way, the best branded cities are built on private sector investment. Napa Valley and all those wineries, Orlando and all those theme parks. I mean, you name it. Nashville and country music, Branson, those are all privately owned theaters. And so, by the way, lack of champions is in gold for one reason. If you have the right champions on board, they will cut through the politics and they will find a way to make it work. So, sometimes you need that bridge brand. And if you market more than one community, you may need an umbrella brand. And we have a separate video that talks all about umbrella brands. So in a nutshell, here you go. These are the 10 rules of branding. You should print this, keep it on your desk, and make sure that every time you do any element of branding, you're abiding by these rules. And the next video in this series is Branding 3, the 10 steps to developing a successful brand. And it's actually, I added a couple in there to break it down more to 14 steps.